This is Treecast, the place to catch up on what trees are new and rare on the Canadian prairies, exciting fall colors, Japanese cherry lookalikes, and neighbor-envying evergreens are just some of the topics we cover. Get comfortable and curious as we open your eyes to something new each and every episode.
Hey everybody, welcome to Treecast. Nate and David here. Today we are going to discuss the Blue Arrow Juniper as our third topic. David, have you heard about the Blue Arrow Juniper or do you know much about it?
Not really. I see it around in nurseries and such, and just about the only thing I know about junipers is that they're used for gin, I think, right?
Yes, the berries from the juniper give it that distinctive taste that you either love or hate, depending on which way you go on that one.
Personally, I'm a big fan.
You're a big fan. Okay. Yeah. And you know what? I don't mind it if it's a good quality one, but there's some lower quality ones out there that are probably not so great. Um, for this plant, if they sell it in the nursery out where you are, and they sell it in the nursery where I am, this seems like a plant that can be used in quite different environments. So you guys have quite a bit more precipitation than we do, and we are way colder. So I mean, maybe let's start with where this plant originates from. It is considered a Rocky Mountain juniper, and it is a cultivar that was developed by I cannot find out who. There's no information on it online, so we are just going to we're going to go with what we know, and that is that it's a Rocky Mountain juniper. So this plant grows anywhere from mid Alberta and BC Rocky Mountains all the way down to Mexico. So it can grow in a vastly different environment from the north end down to the south end as far as how cold it gets. And precipitation patterns can vary a bit, but for the most part, it's fairly dry in the Rocky Mountains. So this is, when you compare to something like, I'm going to use the cedar as a comparison here because that is the most, I say, look-alike plant that comes forward here. Yes, the cedars are green, the junipers are blue, but they both have a very similar leaf that it gives that kind of cypress look, Italian cypress look from Italy. So this Blue Arrow juniper specifically from the Rocky Mountains can handle much more drought than what you will see with your typical cedar that a lot of people try to grow. So one big benefit right off the bat. Now, I remember we had a conversation about xeriscaping last time we talked. With xeriscaping, you get to plants that don't need a whole lot of TLC, you could say. As far as using it out there, out in BC, what do you find? Have you seen them planted around the neighborhoods? What do people mostly use it for?
Yeah, usually just hedges, and because there's a lot of bedrock here, I think, or like we're close to the bedrock as opposed to 6 feet of soil, and then you get bedrock. So you get a lot of like outcrops of rock that people just put a little bit of dirt on, and then they'll plant. And by a little bit, I mean a few feet, a foot and a half maybe of dirt, and then they'll plant their blue arrows on and make a hedge on. But yeah, since there's good drainage because of the bedrock, I think they're able to handle that.
Right, exactly. So I mean, hedging is probably the number one thing that you will use this plant for, and people are looking for a hardier, more drought tolerant version of a cedar out here in Alberta because a lot of people seem to kill the cedars. We're gonna have another conversation about cedars altogether in a different podcast because it's gonna be a fun topic. But these junipers, I've planted them out here in St. Paul. We've seen minus 45 out here. I have them in widely wind exposed areas that, I mean, they get the worst of winter and they have performed very well. So I'm very happy with this tree. You will see it rated as zone 4 on a lot of websites, which means down to minus 34 Celsius. I highly disagree with that. I'll say at least minus 45. And then I've seen these grow fast. Surprisingly, I thought they'd be a little slower, but no, I've seen them probably do up to 12 inches in 1 year for one of the, I put in 2 hedges for a person's backyard and they've been growing very quickly. So, as far as a tree that can replace like a let's see, skybound cedar or, emerald cedar. Perfect option. It might be a little thinner. I mean, to be honest, I don't know. I think it's a great option, but as far as size goes, you're looking at about 15 feet high at maturity and 3 feet wide-ish, around there. And yeah, I mean, hedge application. You can run them as a row down your driveway and give it that really nice, again, Italian cypress look. So it kind of has that Italian look to it. And then, is there any other thoughts are you thinking for application or any other questions that you had on what you would do with this tree?
Oh, yeah. What about growth rate compared to the cedars you're comparing it to?
I mean, with cedars, there's so many different cultivars, but as far as the two that I specifically mentioned, very similar. I mean, I typically get about 8 inches on my Techni cedar hedge that I have, but Skyrocket, I could see them doing 12 to 16. So I would say a bit faster, but the biggest key here is the drought tolerance, which is, I mean, not even comparable to the cedar in any way. I I'll say, I'm just going to go over this a little bit, but the amount of people that tell me that cedars are impossible to grow in Alberta, it is a huge number of people. I mean, I think I have about 60 cedars in my yard, so they grow here, and there's about 500 in my town. I mean, it's not an issue of whether they grow. It's an issue of whether you want to put the resources towards them to keep them going, especially during drought times.
Hmm.
Because I mean, even after 5 years, 6 years, 7 years in the ground, if we go through a really hard drought summer, you can burn them off in the winter because they just don't have the water. They don't have the root system to get the water. So a cedar is a super high maintenance plant in Alberta. This juniper, phenomenal to use as a replacement. That's all I'm going to say. The first year though, I would make sure they go into winter well watered because the root system's so small, and maybe even the second year, but they seem to get a lot of drought tolerance really quickly after they get those roots established. Any other thoughts, David?
Yeah, what about their growth pattern? You said they're fairly slender, so I imagine they might not need much in the way of trimming then.
I wouldn't touch them. What you can do though is if you cut the top, I find it thickens everywhere else. So that's a lot of hedging technique here. Is the more you cut the top, it seems to thicken up everything underneath because the growth has to go somewhere. I mean,
Yeah.
it will push up a bit still, but I find it thickens a little more. So if you do want to, you might get them a little wider than that 3 feet. If you do that over and over and over again, eventually it'll continue pushing sideways a bit, but I don't think you're going to get too
Mm.
much more.
So just wait for them to grow to the length or height that you want them at, and then start topping them.
Yeah, once a year. That's all I would do. I would do it after their growth has come, which typically they're probably done by about midsummer. But you can prune these at any time of the year. I mean, it's like a cedar. I've pruned at any time of the year. It doesn't seem to affect them, which is one of the nicest things about having these plants. It's really nice to be able to not have to worry, oh, am I gonna, cause any issues if I do it in fall or if I do it in spring. I've pruned it every single time of the year. Never seen any issues with either of these. So, yeah, I would say very low maintenance. Like just to recap here, I'd say a very low maintenance hedge versus a cedar. Very drought tolerant. Pretty quick growing for an evergreen. Blue, not green. And then anything else I'm missing here?
Well, you've said drought tolerant a million times, so definitely not that. uh, Slender, that's basically the only disadvantage. They're just a little bit more slender than the cedars.
Yes, and you know what? Just as a final little asterisk here, I'm going to say that if you want something a bit wider that's the exact same look, go with a moon glow juniper, and you're going to get 6, 7, 8 feet wide, and then you're gonna have what you want for size. So I mean, it's the exact same plant pretty much. It's just a wider version, and I find it's even a little bit hardier. But I don't think you're having an issue with hardiness with either of these. But yeah, I mean, I think that's it for today. I think we've got everything on this on this juniper. The Blue Arrow Juniper it is, and you'll also find a Skyrocket Juniper out there, very similar, a tiny bit wider as well. I mean, I don't see much of a difference. So, but great plant for hedging, great plant for running up driveways, and I think that's all for today. I appreciate everybody coming out.
All right, see you around, buddy.